Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel or welcome to my channel. I'm Bird's Eye View Politics, and in this video I'm going to be covering the recent advances by Ukraine in Kherson. So let's step back a bit to early September when Ukraine announced that they were launching a new southern counteroffensive. A counteroffensive with the stated goal of the retaking of the city of Kherson, a strategically important city in southwestern Ukraine. When Ukraine announced this, many analysts and military thinkers on both sides expected that Ukraine would make significant progress throughout the month of September. However, Ukraine barely made any progress through September, and by early October, the offensive had mostly stalled. However, Ukraine had made significant progress further to the northeast, where they launched a different offensive, the Kharkiv offensive, over in the northeast, taking cities such as Kupiansk and Borova. They even pushed into Luhansk Oblast, which they hadn't even been in since earlier back in April. Now, this was obviously a good month for Ukraine. The month of September led to the ejecting of Russia from much of Kharkov Oblast, but it had very little movement in southwest. This was still the case in early October when the Kharkiv offensive stalled, and very little progress was made for Ukraine. Even by the 4th of October, they were still stuck far north of Kherson, but they had taken over the northeast section of the oblast, and they had barely made any movement from Mykolaiv towards Kherson. However, during this time, all the way from early September until early November, the Ukrainians had been hitting Russian supply lines repeatedly, blowing up bridges and destroying new Russian bridges that known as pontoon bridges that had just been built. Ukraine then was able to successfully defeat Russian attempts to resupply their forces on the West Bank, also known as the Right Bank, because of how the maps work in Ukraine and Russia, uh, in that region. And this lack of supplies for the Russian soldiers meant that they had to retreat. And early November, Russia announced this. Russia was originally thought to be potentially bluffing with Ukrainians, saying that they would not be drawn into a trap. However, it was clear from geolocated evidence that Russia was in fact retreating, and many reports have gone out of Russian soldiers changing into civilian uniforms and trying to flee, with many being captured by the Ukrainians who swiftly arrived in the city on the 11th of November, just 2 days ago. Since the start of this offensive a week ago, the Ukrainian military has liberated more than 179 settlements on the right bank of the Dnipro River, or on more than 4,500 square kilometers, and stabilization measures and demining are being carried out there, which means that the Ukrainians will be able to ensure that civilians who fled the attacks earlier in the war, maybe to cities such as Mykolaiv, Odessa, or even further to the northwest or north, are able to return to their homes soon. Ukraine also, soon after retaking Kherson, began artillery battles over the Dnieper River, with battles from Ernhodar and Nikopol, with opposing artillery duels happening just as I make this video. And the same can be said of Zaporizhia over here. You've had many artillery duels throughout this section where the river is the widest. However, the taking of Kherson, as well as the subsequent blowing up of any remaining bridges that Russia still controlled by the retreating Russians themselves, mean that Ukraine will probably have to resupply for at least a week to maybe 2 weeks before continuing to advance, if they choose to, into the rest of Kherson. If they were to do this, it would make a lot more sense of why Russia has taken some recent actions, with reports and geolocated stuff now showing that Russia is building trenches in the city of Armyansk, and they've also moved their regional capital from Kherson, which is now fallen, over to Henechetsk, which is about as far away as you can get from Kherson and the front line in general. However, at least for the next 2 weeks, the focus is going to shift towards the eastern part of the front, with flags, Russian flags specifically, such as in Melitopol, being taken down by locals in preparation for a potential Ukrainian attack into what are mostly plains which are very good for offensive maneuver warfare that Ukraine is increasingly gotten better at, as well as over back towards Donetsk and Luhansk, where Russia is finally making some real progress, especially around Soledar and Bakhmut in the center of the front right here. So that's all the updates I have for you from this week, mostly because it all happened so fast. In the span of roughly 2 days, Russia announced they were pulling out of Kherson, and the Ukrainians liberated Kherson 2 days later. And there hasn't been much movement in the northeast or the south of the front. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for this video, and I will see you next time.